Today on a special Rambling About Cars, we are going all in on Japanese cars, and we literally have special guests with us that have written the book on them. We are very excited to get into this topic and just to have a blast. So without further ado, it is podcast time. I am Christopher Smith, Mr. Chris Bruce across the way. We have some VIPs here. Why don't you tell all the ramblers what we have going on here?
Absolutely. We have the authors of, I'm going to hold it up here, A Quiet Greatness, Japan's Most Astonishing Automobiles for the Collector and the Enthusiast. And we have the authors of that with us, and that would be Mark Brinker and Myron Vernis. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a fantastic book, and I'm looking so forward to talking to you guys about it.
Well, let's explain. It's fantastic books. Correct?
Yes. It is 4 volumes and a supplement. I feel sorry for my mail carrier who had to deliver it because this thing has to weigh every bit of 35 to 40 pounds. So yes, it is a big book. But without further ado, I want our guests to introduce themselves.
Yes.
So please, whoever would like to go first. Mark,
alphabetically, it's Mark.
Okay, yeah, Mark. Just introduce yourself. Tell us all about how you got into this crazy world.
So I'm Mark Brinker, and I'm originally from Long Island. I live in Houston. Have been a lifelong car nut. Grew up in a family that had a little bit of interest in cars, but not anything like me. My dad, liked sporty cars. Always had a new Eldorado. I had an uncle who used to race cars on the streets of Brooklyn, but no collectors in my family, but just grew up loving cars. I blame part of it on movies, Grand Prix, Le Mans. My mom's kind of a movie buff, and so used to watch a lot of movies with her and just fell in love with the automobile. When I was a kid, was always fascinated by different cars and particularly sports cars, and really didn't have any money or resources until my 30s. Went to college, then went to med school, then did a 6-year residency. So I was broke till my early 30s, and then started, putting a collection together, and started with books. When I was a kid, really it was car magazines. I know that's maybe some of your listeners don't know what a car magazine is.
Oh, I think they do.
No, they do. No, I can tell you, our YouTube demographics, we appeal to the 40s and 50s set.
Great.
So
okay.
Trust me, our audience knows about a car magazine.
So used to read, Road and Track, Car and Driver, Hot Rod, and was just mesmerized by that. So as I've gotten older, the sickness has gotten worse. The collection has gotten bigger, and then I've met people like Myron who have cross-infected me worse, and so guys like Myron and I just sort of feed off each other's sort of compulsions. And I'll let Myron tell you about how the book came to be, but I met Myron. How long ago did we meet, Myron? 15 years ago?
Yeah, at least 15 years.
And so we just have a lot of similar interests. And my version of the story is Myron talked me into writing the book. We'll see what he says.
Yeah, Mark and I have a lot of similarities, but we're amazingly different in a lot of ways too. And our background's very different, where there was at least some core enthusiasm in his family. My dad hated cars. He looked at them as the worst evil ever put on man. And my mom never drove. And I lived the first 5 years of my life in Greece, where we never even owned a car. And my mom said I used to sit on the balcony of our apartment just looking at cars all day long and trying to sneak down to the bakery below because the guy owned a red Jeep that I was always asking to take me for a ride in. So that's kind of where it came from. I don't know where it came from. Unlike Mark, who did gain a level of wealth in his middle age, I'm still broke, but hasn't stopped me from buying all kinds of cars. And that's kind of where we kind of were bad influence on each other. And the book was totally Mark's idea. I'm not a writer. Mark has written books. He's written screenplays. He's done all kinds of great things.
Oh, wow.
And he spent a couple of years trying to convince me that a book needed to be done. I knew a book needed to be done, but I just kind of fought the concept of doing it. But then when I retired a few years ago, really had no other excuses. So we got started on what we thought was going to be like a 1-volume, 300-page, just kind of coffee table book on Japanese cars. And we neither one of us, I think we bring a lot to the table between the two of us, but neither one of us are artistic. So at that point, we hired Richard Barron, who was the art director for Road and Track magazine for about 30 years, really one of the pros in the business, to put the book together for us, and because we knew we wanted a beautiful book. Mm-hmm. And then it just became the world's worst example of mission creep. We started discovering cars that we really thought should be in there, and it went from a 300-page book to 1,400 pages and exactly 35 pounds. So
35,
I was
exactly
close.
3,500 pounds. 35.
So I guess I have to understand, like, explain to me what's the process of, okay, you go from we're going to write a book on Japanese cars. How does it happen, though, you end up with 4 volumes and a supplement? Because that's what you have here, that it's not, it is the breadth of Japanese cars. It is, kind of every kind of important Japanese sports car, certainly, and we're going to get to that later on. But so how does that happen? Like, who do you go to and say, well, we're going to add Hino. Well, we're going to add Daihatsu. We're going to add Suzuki. It's not going to be Honda, Toyota, and Mazda. Like, it's going to be, all of these brands.
So the answer is really pretty simple. And it centers around the fact that an Excel spreadsheet does not have a limited number of lines. If an Excel spreadsheet had a top and a bottom, it would have been simple. But for those of you who've used Excel spreadsheets, they go on forever. You can have line 1 billion if you go down enough. So we started compiling a list of cars by manufacturer. We decided early on, and I think it was a good decision, that we would do this by manufacturer because it makes sense to follow the development of Mitsubishi or Honda. That makes a lot more sense than starting, in 1959 and going year by year, because you'd just be jumping around and there'd be no continuity. So I think we made some good decisions in the beginning. And we started with a very manageable list of cars. Mm-hmm. And we just kept talking about and discovering cars while we were doing this. I mean, I can't remember how many were on the list when we started, but, as you get into this, there's not only models, but there's submodels, and then there's special editions. And the book certainly does not contain every Japanese car. I mean, then it would be, 14,000 pages or 140,000 pages. But it contains a great majority of the interesting, collectible, intriguing.
Yeah, I guess let me ask just the quick question there. Would you say there's a specific focus on these volumes of a certain area of the Japanese market that might appeal to people in a different way? Or are we talking about trucks, cars, the whole shot? Is there something that you thought, okay, let's focus more on this?
Well, the list started out and continued to be very subjective on cars that we thought were cool. And that's kind of how, the subtitle, Japan's Most Astonishing Automobiles. They're cars that surprised us. So, I mean, there is kind of a truck in the Datsun D20, but really it was turned into a sports car. But Mark and I both have kind of a penchant for sports cars. So it's very heavily laden with sports cars, because we felt those were the most interesting and the most exciting cars that we looked at. Very heavily focused, and it's all pretty much post-war cars too.
There's also the Mitsubishi Pajero.
The Evo, yeah.
The Evo, right.
Yeah. Real quick, I do want to, I think we put the cart before the horse just a little bit here. I want to mention some of the cars that you guys own, some of the Japanese cars that you guys own. And I'm reading this directly from the About the Author section, specifically for you, Mark, because I've got the page here right in front of me. You have 3 Toyota Sports 800s. Is that not one? A car that may, normal people you might never see. If you're a real fan of Japanese sports cars, maybe you'll see one. You own 3 of them?
So I owned 3 when the book went to press.
Okay.
I own 2 now.
It's tragedy.
Tragedy. Two of the cars I owned were rare left-hand drive. I sold a restoration project, and actually it was bought by a gentleman in Russia who has a restoration shop in Russia. So anybody looking to restore a Japanese car in Russia can contact me, and I can give them the name of that gentleman. But my understanding is that car is almost done being restored. I own 2. One of them I'm preparing to race at Bonneville.
Ooh,
Okay.
that's interesting. I
So
wouldn't think Bonneville right away.
Right.
for-
I immediately have a ton of questions for you. And we're here, and this is rambling about cars, so we're going to do it.
We're going to
First
ramble.
So tell me if I'm mistaken or wrong here. My understanding that both, the Honda S800, S600, and then also the Toyota Sports 800, the left-hand drive examples of those, they were predominantly made for soldiers stationed on Okinawa, that there was enough kind of a market there. Am I mistaken by thinking that, or?
Well, the Toyota, yes, but not the Honda.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Right? We got Hondas in the United States.
and
True.
Canada.
Well, yeah.
Canada actually even got them before we did. So there were North American delivery left-hand drive Hondas, but Mark's right.
Oh, okay.
But the 10% of the Sports 800s that were left-hand drive were made primarily for the Okinawa market, which was U.S. territory after World War II, which is why it was left-hand drive.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then I have to add, tell me about building or driving or taking a Toyota Sports 800 to Okinawa, to Bonneville, please.
So before I tell you that, I'm going to let Myron tell the story of how we met, because we met over a Bonneville car, my first Bonneville car, and that's how Myron and I met. He tells the story better than I do, though.
Yeah,
lay it on us, Myron.
It's and a small bore Bonneville car, very similar to the Sports 800. Before Japanese cars, I had a real strong affliction for Porsche 356s, and then it kind of evolved into other sports cars from France, kind of unique sports car, Matra, Panhard Specials, and one of those was Deutsche Bonnet.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. And for some reason, Ohio seemed to be kind of a hotbed for cast-off Deutsche Bonnet, so they were cheap and easy for a poor person to find.
How did that happen?
Yeah,
what's the story there?
Don't ask me.
One story at a time, Bruce.
So one day I get a call from this guy in Texas. Said, I heard you have a Deutsche Bonnet HBR5. And so actually I have 2 and a Le Mans Spider. But he said, do you want to sell one? I said, I'm really not interested in selling one. And then he told me the story about how he wanted to build one for Bonneville to race a class. And that's, anybody tells you that you have these crazy orphan French cars that nobody knows what they are, and even fewer people care, and you want to build it for Bonneville, then you get my attention. And of course, at that point, I had to sell it to him at a very fair price, if I may add.
Absolutely.
And Mark followed through and set how many records at Bonneville?
8.
Oh, nice.
Whoa.
Right. So I race in a 750cc sports car class. No body modification is allowed. At the time, you could swap engines from the same manufacturer. Of course, there's no engine to swap Panhard to Panhard, But for instance, you could put a 6-cylinder Porsche engine into a 914, or you
Gotcha.
could put a 928 engine into a 911. You could do anything as long as it's the same manufacturer. They've since changed that rule, but basically it's a 750cc stock sports car class, and I hold the naturally aspirated and supercharged record with that car. I retired that car and actually donated it to the Lane Automotive Museum.
Okay.
And so now I'm building a Toyota Sport 800, which we will have de-stroked down to 750cc engine, with a special crank, and I'm going to go after my own record.
Huh.
Nice. When is that planned?
I'm hoping in the next year or two. The whole car is built. The guy who helps me with my cars in Colorado is just a spectacular talent, and I have him covered up with some show cars. So as soon as I stop dumping projects on him, that's his next project, is to build that engine. So a year or two, I would say.
Okay.
Very cool.
I would love to have you back on later on, when you've beaten your own record and you're ready to talk about the next project car, because we know it never ends.
Yeah.
I hope it never ends.
Yes. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the book here.
Wait. I don't want to give Myron short shrift. We were talking about Mark's collection. Myron, you have your Autech Zagato, which for any of our listeners, Doug DeMuro drove that car on one of his videos, which I found hilarious because the entire background was places that I've driven around because my dad worked right in that area. You have a Mazda Cosmo. You have many. You have a Hino Contessa that. Do you have one of the Shelby Hino Contessas? Am I wrong there?
No, I don't. I think I have the only Contessa coupe in the United States, but
that's pretty
no.
That's good.
Mark and I are both kind of a 1300L is something kind of that we're both dreaming of. I know of one in Japan, know where it's at. We also kind of, and as you can tell by the coverage in the book, the Hino Samurai is a car that has intrigued us a lot, another Pete Brock car, but no, mine is just a 1300S coupe, but a super cool car.
Totally.
And I have my own Sports 800 too, so just we're all there. Actually, that kind of came in a package with Mark's. So we
okay.
We tell the story that writing the book, and we self-published the book because we wanted total control of the book as far as how it looked and how it was distributed and how it was priced and things like that. But so it became a pretty expensive process for us. But the thing that really made it expensive that we didn't anticipate is we discovered cars that we had to have. And between the two,
oh, that's okay. Yep, been there.
Yeah, between the two of us, the going number is I think we bought 18 cars between the two of us, and as a direct result of the book. And the Autech Zagato is one of those cars. That's something neither one of us had ever heard of or seen prior to embarking on this project.
I don't know. That sounds like a tax write-off to me, because you're doing it for the
business
expense.
For
we're not talking. We're not going to talk about taxes on this.
And so, real quick, speaking of Zagato, Mark, you own a incredibly rare Zagato. I think it's single digits. That Toyota VM 180. I'll try to pull the picture up of it because I've got the book here, but that's a rare one. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the rumor is they made somewhere between 50 and 100 of them. It's an MR2 with a Zagato body. I don't know if there's another one in North America. That car is actually in Canada because it's not yet legal to bring into the U.S. I bought it through a dealer and trying to see if we can get that eligible for show and display. But it's, Zagato made gorgeous cars, and then they made sort of wild cars that are not beautiful. And I think this car is somewhere in between. There's some Zagato cars that are really just not attractive from the 90s and, from the 2000s. And I'm a big Zagato lover. So if any, I don't want any hate mail. I'm a big Zagato fan. This car has some absolutely beautiful elements to it.
Yeah, we're looking at it now. If you go over to Motor One Podcast on YouTube, you can see a little bit of what we're talking about. What you really should do though is buy the book. Let me throw in a quick plug there, because you said you're self-published. Where can people buy the book? Sorry, the books, the volume.
Yeah. So we have a website. It's www.quietgreatness, which is the name of the book.com. Quiet like not noisy, and greatness like great.
Wonderful.
Quietgreatness.com. Of course, we'll have links on the YouTube description. We'll have links in our article that goes up on motor1.com every Friday. We'll have links everywhere. This is an awesome setup. We're just looking at some images here now. Let me ask really quick, because I've been off and on, and I suspect there are quite a few listeners out there that have been off and on the idea of writing some sort of car book. You talked a little bit about just how your process started. Is there any advice that you would give to anybody that's thinking about writing some sort of car book? I mean, I've been into the Torah show community for years and years and years and decades, and I had the opportunity to work at Ford for a little bit. So I know some people that I can reach out to get this, to try to track down some of this information. What would be your advice to somebody, especially like me, that would write a book that will probably 10 or 15 people max might buy, right?
Writing is the easy part. It's the fun part.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking to do it as a business or for profit, just kind of erase those thoughts from your mind right away.
Mark, do you have anything to add? Oh.
Yeah. So I would say, have a plan and stick to it. Myron and I stuck to the plan. It's just our final product grew, but I don't think we deviated from the plan. The plan was write a book about the most interesting, most collectible, most iconic Japanese cars. We picked post-war and we stuck to that. We stuck to our format. The other two things I would say is, engage people who have experience and are talented in laying out the book. Depends on what level you want to do it to. If you're writing a paperback book and you just want to have fun and don't care what it looks like, you can do it yourself. But the quality of the layout is second to none in our book. So
absolutely. That's why I was trying to pull up some of the more interesting layouts. As you were
so
saying.
We decided from the cover to the binding to the paper. So you have to decide what level you want to play at.
Mm-hmm.
We have Richard Barron, as we mentioned. We also have a fantastic indexer. We also had Rory Jernick, who works for Sports Car Market. He helped us just proofread the book. And then most importantly, be organized. It's easy to be organized if you work at it and, make files, put the text in Word documents, put all the accompanying photographs in the same file. Otherwise, it just becomes a mess. And the bigger the book, the bigger the mess.
Mm-hmm.
So we had, 200 something cars, different cars. We had 2,200 photographs. We had 14 manufacturers. So if we used 2,200 photos in the book, we probably had 22,000 photos in the files, right? Because we selected. So I think being organized is really critical.
And, I think the other thing too, like Mark said, we stayed to our plan, but, we also had a goal and a mission. And I think that's kind of like the rallying point. Like even when you have a business, our goal in doing this was to create the first serious, beautiful book about Japanese cars in the English language. We felt that there were lots of beautiful books, lots of great books on Porsche, Ferrari, Lamborghini, you name it. But we wanted to help do what we could to elevate this section of the hobby, this end of the hobby, to the level it deserves to be in. And that was kind of our that was, again, our rallying thing. When we did everything that we did, it had to be first rate. We had to do it at the level that a Porsche or Ferrari book wanted, because that was really kind of our initial spiritual goal.
I just real quick wanted to shout out some of the photography in the book here that I'm showing, and it's worth mentioning, especially for anyone who's listening on our audio services rather than watching on YouTube, that it's not just there. While there is some like vintage press photos, which are fantastic, there's some kind of original photography as well. And this photo of a second gen RX-7 in front of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland is just wonderful. This is probably my favorite photo in the entire book, not only as a Mazda fan, an RX-7 fan, but also as a Akron-ish native, someone who grew up in the environs of Cleveland. That just kind of all of that together there. I love this photo.
Yeah, Mark, we estimate that a full 2 years of our project was tied up in sourcing and selecting photography. And every one of the 2,200 photographs in the book we have attribution for, we have the rights to, and they're all in the index, because we felt that was very important, that, again, a legitimate book, we did this. Mark mentioned that we have a terrific indexer. When we first started this project, we weren't going to have an index. It was going to be a coffee table book. It was going to be beautiful. But as things rolled along and it got so big, and some great information that we were able to find, Mark primarily with his tables and his graphs and his 8x10 colored glossies with circles and arrows. At that point, we decided we needed an indexer. So that the fifth volume, the supplement, is really pretty much the index and photo credits.
Now, how long did the project take all total?
Project took 6 years.
Wow.
Okay.
So just sort of adding on to what Myron said, I've heard people talk about this book as a coffee table book, and one of our goals was to make it beautiful like a coffee table book, but it's also encyclopedic in information. For instance, if you want to know every Sports Car Club of America champion in a Japanese car, it's there. If you want to know every podium finish for a World Rally Championship competitor in a Japanese car, it's there. One of the things that Myron and I are most proud of, it's a small thing, but some of these tables and data sets that you open it up and it's like, okay, there it is. There's 40, 50, 60 hours worth of research into one table.
That's fantastic.
And we have, probably, I don't know, 100 tables. I'm guessing. I haven't counted them. The Hakasukas, the early Nissan Skylines, there was always this rumor that they won 50-something consecutive races. But, that's a nice tagline, but what does that mean? So we found and researched all the races, had them translated from the Japanese language, and there they are in the book. So it's, it's no longer just like one sentence. You want to know who raced where and whether it was a sedan or a coupe and what the racetrack was and what the date is. So that's the approach we took, which is very much not coffee table book.
Right.
No, this is just like next level type information. And
Right.
I think what you said earlier about, there are lots of books of Ferrari and Porsche. Just from my vantage point as a fan of Japanese cars, I've seen the Japanese market just really pick up interest, especially in the last probably 10 or 15 years. So bravo on the timing for this,
But I was going to mention real quick, and you were talking about how this is also a really useful reference book, that Japanese production cars with all-wheel drive. You have all of them listed. And then not only that, but you go through and you list this type of all-wheel drive system. So full-time, part-time, variable ratio, and then, full true four-wheel drive with a differential and stuff like that. It's all here, and it's so cool. And I won't even lie to you. I've actually used this in a story that I wrote last week. I was writing about someone had a tuned R32 Nissan GTR, and that's one of the models mentioned in the book. And I used the information that you guys had. Like, I talked about the debut date and then talked about some of the special editions and things like that. And it was a fantastic reference material to have on hand. So.
That's great to hear, because Mark will agree, because that specific table and that information, that was a subject of our discussion and consternation for at least a month in doing it right and getting the right labels on the things. So, and even in the cars, we're not the absolute source on some models like the Miata, which is ubiquitous, or the 240s. The whole books, volumes have been written on those cars. But even in those areas, we strove to find information that wasn't published anywhere else. So even the cars that we know that there are, whole books written about, you'll find something in there that you're not going to see anywhere else.
Cool. And so, go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
So, something that dawned on me while we were writing this book that happened at an auction, in Monterey. I walked up, and one of the auction people and a customer were talking about Skylines. And, I played dumb, and I just, asked what a Skyline was and how many there were. And, can you explain this to me? And I wasn't being a jerk, but I just kind of wanted to, sort of get a grasp of what's out there. Yeah, information wise. And they couldn't answer any of the questions, which made it clear that, if it's easy to just say the word Skyline, right? Mm-hmm. Well, are you talking about a Skyline GTR or a Skyline? There were lots of Skylines that weren't GTRs. Mm-hmm. So we march through all the generations, and we don't talk about every single model, but if you spend 2 hours just reading the Skyline, maybe you read it twice, that section, you'll really have a good grasp on Skylines. You'll know more than 99.9% of the hobby. Mm-hmm. And it took us way more than 2 hours to figure out how to present it. It took us a long time, but but it was also an educational process for Myron and I. The all-wheel drive table that you talked about started with my frustration of trying to understand what is all this. Every company has a different special name for their four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive technology, and how do they work? And so that was sort of the genesis for that table. Was Myron and I decided, okay, we got to figure out what this is. It's just a mess. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of things in the book like that we don't think anybody's ever sort of attacked in that way.
It's a fantastic book. Yeah. And I appreciate you for putting that work in, because it's going to make my life a lot easier when I've been writing about cars now for 12 years, that I've got this book on my, on my shelf. It's causing the shelf to kind of dip down some. I'm not going to lie, but I've got the book on my shelf for now, but I can grab it. And if I'm writing about Subaru, Mazda, Honda, Toyota, Daihatsu, Suzuki, whatever brand, I can pull it off the shelf. And if it's one of the models in there, I can immediately have that information. And you guys have that supplement that comes with it that lists every single one of your sources, and it's page after page of your listed sources. So I guess from my own personal selfishness, thank you.
That makes us, makes us both happy to hear that, because we wanted to make it, we spent a lot of time making it user friendly. Like one of the small details like that, like the contents for every volume isn't every volume. So if
Right.
you're in volume 1 and you think, gosh, I need to look this up, you could just stay in that volume and say, oh, I got to go to volume 3 to learn about this. So again, a lot of little things into making it as user friendly for an unwieldy, for 1,400 pages.
Yeah.
Now you said earlier as you were going through, because you can get the spreadsheets with just the lines that go forever. As you were researching, you kept finding more things to add and discovering more things, discovering more models or submodels or trim level special editions. Is there a specific vehicle or a specific submodel or special edition that you found throughout the course of writing this that just stands out to you, that surprised you, that still makes you go, wow, I had no idea this was here, and this is just the coolest thing I've ever seen?
Well, I already mentioned the Autech Zagato for me, and so that's one that I do have.
Mhm.
And the other one is on my short list when it's legal is the Mitsuoka Orochi. So I mean those two cars, they just floored me when I saw them, and fortunate enough to find one. And mark my words, I'll have one as soon as I can legally have one in the United States for the Mitsuoka.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because I'm going to be ashamed to say I've never heard of that.
Yeah, and it's probably
I need to get the book is what I need to do. I need to buy
probably
these.
a good thing that you haven't heard of one. Mitsuoka is a very small manufacturer. I think that officially the 10th largest manufacturer in Japan. They primarily convert other people's cars, but they're an official manufacturer. And this is one of the very few cars that they built ground up from scratch, their own frame, kind of like their Halo car, their Corvette, their Viper. And it's, Toyota powered, but everything else is Mitsuoka design, named after a monster, kind of looks like a monster, but just a very special hand-built car.
Okay. Mark, was there one that stood out for you here?
Well, lots of cars. And as Myron painfully alluded to, together we bought somewhere between 18 and 20 cars. So the MR2 Zagato, I'd never heard of, and I just thought that was fantastic. I knew what a Subaru 22B was, before we started, but I think I learned a lot about it during the process. And I was lucky enough to buy one of those about 4.5 years ago.
Nice.
That just came into the U.S. under show and display. Don't know that that's a secret car or a surprising car, but I learned a lot about it and fell in love with it again. The Nissan Pulsar GTI-R is a car that Myron and I both think is sort of the performance bargain car of the universe, Japanese or anything otherwise. It was a homologated race car. Nissan thought that they were going to, be in contention for the World Rally Championship with that car. It's really well built, other than where they put the intercooler. They put it on top of the engine, and so overheating was a constant problem. The cars were really fast. The only podium finish was at a Swedish rally where it was really, really cold.
That works.
They made a Nismo edition, and I was able to, during the process of writing the book, buy one, and then another one came out of the woodwork. So I have 2 of the 20 examples of that. There's a car that nobody probably cares about. That's a submodel that's in the book, but I care a lot about it. There's a car called a Nissan March Super Turbo, and this is the answer to the question, I think, of what happens when Nissan executives have too much sake for lunch. So I don't know how it came to be, but I imagine them sitting around a boardroom and they're having sushi and sake, and one of the engineers says, let's build a 930cc turbocharged car for the masses, and they built 10,000 of them. And then 20 minutes later, after they've had more sake, another engineer stands up and says, let's also supercharge it. So here you have a twin charged, basically commuter car for Japan. And if that's not ridiculous enough, before they released the production cars, they made a short run called the Nissan March R, which was a lightweight example of this ridiculous twin charged 930cc car. So after 5 years of searching, I was able to acquire one of those. I think it's a really interesting mechanical, looking thing, and it's kind of a classic wedge shape. It's not going to knock you over, but a really cool, rare car,
and very accessible too. I had a base Super Turbo years ago. Not a very good example, but the cars are accessible, and you can brag to your Lancia 37 friends that you've got a twin car.
I like that. So I wanted to throw
Delta S4 friends.
Yeah, that's right.
I wanted to throw it out to you guys of something I did not know existed. So I knew about the Subaru RX, which for anyone out, it was kind of the predecessor to like the Legacy Turbo. What I did not know until I read your book, that available in the US, and this is literally the only 2 photos I've seen of this car. Oops, I got to go this way. That they made a coupe version. And now I want one, and I've never seen one. I didn't know this car existed. I don't even know if it's a good car, but it's just like, talk about obscure Subarus, especially in the United States. And I think this is the definition of obscure Subarus.
Well, that probably means Myron's owned half a dozen of them.
Probably, yeah.
Well, I think that's a good example of a car that is super cool, super rare, and still super accessible, right? Mm-hmm. When you do find one, I'll guarantee you it's not going to cost you a whole heck of a lot of money. It may need some work. It's going to take some work to find one, but it's indicative of our approach to the cars that we put in the book. We didn't go by the most expensive cars. Of course, there's big feature on Toyota 2000 GTs in there, but there are cars like the Super Turbo, like the GTIR, the Pulsar GTIR, like this car that the average enthusiast can easily afford, and the cars through the years were all amazingly well built. So maintenance is I'm not going to say a breeze, because some of the parts may not always be easily accessible, but much more so than like an Italian exotic or something like that.
Yeah. So part of my collection is Italian sports cars from the 1950s. And
ooh, that's expensive. Yeah.
Here's a setup for you, Myron. What's the difference between those cars and my Japanese cars?
I mean, I think I know the answer, but go ahead.
Japanese cars start every time you turn the key.
Yeah, that's right. They start every time you turn the key. Although every time I've been to your place, all your Italian cars have started too. So
you're ruining the story, Myron.
So real quick, Smith and I were actually talking about this before the show, and so it's a perfect segue. We were trying to decide, we were debating whether or not, so you have a Yamaha section in your book. Smith is the biggest lover of Ford
I don't know if I'm the biggest. I don't know if I'm the biggest, but I
know you are. Which Yamaha designed that engine, and you have a section for Yamaha, this gorgeous little car. Gorgeous is an odd word. Weird little car called the Ami. But did Yamaha also worked on the Toyota 2000 GT? Am I right there?
Well, they did. Yamaha has a long-standing history for engine development with Toyota. Not only, I mean, Yamaha effectively built the 2000 GT. That was a Yamaha project. They actually took it to Nissan first. Nissan turned it down. They took it to Toyota, and Toyota embraced it, basically redesigned it. But the 2000 GT is basically a Yamaha. Again, built for Toyota. I have a car called a 1600 GT, which is even in the book. Most people look at it and say it's a Corona coupe, but from the late 60s. but they sent raw body shells to Yamaha, and they built them up. A lot of shared components of the 2000 GT, and a Yamaha designed and built motor called the 9R, which is basically a 2000 GT motor, just the 4-cylinder that was just in the 1600 GT. So there's still a very long-standing relationship. Pretty much any twin cam engine that Toyota built, 60s, 70s, 80s, if not totally created by Yamaha, was tweaked by Yamaha.
There you go, Smith.
Oh
Those
yeah,
reasons.
no. I knew that Yamaha had built quite a few engines for cars. Obviously, they're known for motorcycles. I just couldn't remember exactly if it was the 2000 GT. I think they also played a role, like eventually with the Volvo XC90. I think the V8 that was used in the Volvo.
Well, I think they also worked on the LFA, if I'm not mistaken. I think Yamaha had a little bit to do with the LFA.
I'm a big Yamaha fan. So
yeah. We talked SHOs before, so
yeah.
Well, here's a little shout out to all the Yamaha Ami owners. Myron and I each want one. So if any Yamaha Ami owners are listening, please call us.
Yeah, and
For valid.
I lied earlier saying that our book isn't like the total information source on any specific model. With the Yamaha Ami, you're not going to find any more information. That's it. We researched that in depth, actually to the point of one of the photos was snapped by a friend of ours in Japan of a car turning a corner.
Oh, this bottom one. Okay, yeah. If you're watching on YouTube, the one on the bottom, yeah.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So we've got 20-ish kind of minutes left. So
Yeah, 10, 20 minutes.
Yeah, let's get nerdy. So I want to know what.
No, wait. You mean we haven't been nerdy to this point? I mean,
we totally have, Bruce. We totally have.
Okay. Well,
we totally have.
But go ahead. Let's jump in.
He wants DEFCON 5.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we're all turning our keys simultaneously here. What money, rarity, whatever, no object. What is your favorite Japanese car? Pick one. I'm making this hard. Pick one.
Yeah, crickets. That's hard, man.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm a fan of Japanese cars, and I haven't written several volumes, and I couldn't answer that question.
Okay.
If I had
maybe top 5.
If I had to pick one car from the book to put in my garage, it would be the Hino Samurai.
Okay, yeah.
And by the way, I have tried to put that car in my garage unsuccessfully.
Myron, your turn.
For me, it would be more of a nostalgic kind of emotional thing. Probably the Mazda Cosmo, because it's the car that I've driven the most, the JDM car that I've owned that I've driven the most, and it's a truly unique driving experience. So I won't say it's the most fun car, but overall package, it's the most unique and fun car.
And here is the aforementioned Hino Samurai.
Nice. That's a Peter Brock design. I mean, how do you get any better than that?
Yeah,
you don't.
Built my Troutman Barnes, the special Hino engine, just super car.
Well, Bruce, I mean, you asked the question. I mean, you need to answer it too.
There you go.
I was real quick. Hold on, but no,
okay.
I got to embarrass my dad, Myron, a second. He also bought the book, and he came by your shop, and I think my mom might have a little bit of a crush on you, by the way. But you offered to let him drive your Cosmo, and he told me he was actually kind of a little bit afraid to drive it, and that's why he did.
He was a little nervous.
He was a little nervous. So embarrassing, Dad. Anyway, so I will tell you. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's my one that got away. And Smith, you might remember this. 2019 on Craigslist, Myron, this was in Kent. The road, it was right there by where the old Kent Theater was, right on Main there.
Yep.
Someone was selling a Toyota Cressida wagon. And I should have bought that car. It wasn't even, it was like $2,500, $3,000. It wasn't even a money issue. It was just a space issue.
Mhm.
I should have bought that car.
I remember you talking about that. I do. I remember you talking about
That's
that.
like my one that got away.
You know,
Can we?
I've got
Go
a
ahead.
73 Crown Wagon, right-hand drive, JDM. Actually, it came from JDM Legends. Just dropped just enough. Kind of a funky car, nothing pristine about it, but that car gets more love from everybody. It's just one of those friendly cars. It's just
Maybe we have a deal going here.
Maybe.
That's what I'm thinking. Bruce, you just bought a new Subaru. Get rid of that thing, man.
Hey,
My wife's gonna love taking a Toyota Crown Wagon rather than her 2023 Subaru.
Right-hand drive with 3 on the tree, shifting with your left hand. I'm sure she'd absolutely love that deal.
Yeah. But so my thing with the Cressida is that it has that same inline 6 engine as the Supra of the period, but it looks like a Volvo 740, which is another car that I love. And you combine an engine I love and a shape I love in a car that most people don't know exists, and I should have bought that car. I should have bought. I know exact. I should have bought that car. So yeah, that's my answer.
All right,
That's-
one
that's
more
right.
person to weigh in on this.
So, can we include prototypes in this, or does it have to be production?
I said money, no option. So yeah, go for it.
Dome Zero.
I was going to ask you
Well,
guys about that.
The wedgiest wedge car that ever wedged. I just love. I love every aspect of that thing. And actually, it was the basis for one of my favorite first generation Transformers hot rod.
There you go.
Yeah. The Dome Zero, I always thought that thing was just insanely awesome. Just the epitome of wedge. But for something that I could actually get, my heart still belongs to a Z31 300ZX.
Well, if it's any consolation, the Dome was a complete failure as a production car and a race car. So
it fits with me perfectly because I'm just a failure and everything.
And Myron, you answered my question actually, because I always wondered, is it Dome or Dome? Because Dome would be the proper Japanese pronunciation, but I wasn't sure if it was they were trying to do an American loan word, and so it was Dome. So you answered my question.
Well, I don't even know that it really matters, right? Because being Greek, I get asked a lot of times, how words should be pronounced, and gyro being the perfect one. And I say, well, where do you live? And if they say Akron, Ohio, I say gyro. If you're in Athens, Greece, it's gyro. It just it really doesn't matter.
Well, and I'm very, very good at mispronouncing everything, so I'm gonna remember that though. Dome. It never occurred to me all this time.
Yeah.
The Domes are okay.
I'm not sure which is correct. I'm not sure. So yeah. Also, I prompted this to you guys in the email beforehand, so I kind of wanted to let you think about it. Let's say you guys, since you self-published the book, you decide the response has been fantastic. People are clamoring for it. I'm clamoring for it. We get to do a volume 5. What would be in volume 5?
You want to go first or second, Myron?
I've got an answer, but go ahead.
So if we were going to do that, I'd make it a volume 5 and a volume 6.
And a 7 and an 8.
No, one of the volumes would be focused on all the special engines. Devote more time to all the special engines. A lot of these street engines were built so stout that just with, fuel and ignition, you could bump the horsepower. And if you took them apart, like the Pulsar GTIR motor put out 238 horsepower, but without opening the motor, you could get 400 horsepower. And if you took it apart and rebuilt it, you could get 650 horsepower. This is out of a 2-liter motor. Mm-hmm. So a volume devoted to some of the special motors and in greater depth. And then maybe a volume on some of the really cool prototypes. Because there's a whole world of, really special prototypes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Please write the engine book. Please do that.
So Mark's second volume was my volume. It was the prototypes and the show cars that we decided early on that we weren't going to do a lot of those. We weren't going to feature any of them. And we there's a smattering of them in there as they were related to actual production cars, but the Japanese prototypes and the cars were just spectacular. A lot of them involved Italian designers over the years. Just super, super cool stuff. And, unlike what we found is unlike a lot of the American manufacturers, the Japanese didn't get rid of their show cars. A lot of those are in their heritage collections. Very few Japanese show cars were destroyed or got away.
That's yeah. I could see that. I could see both of those being just epic stuff, because there's I mean, even still in 2022, I think there's still a lot of people, especially here in the Western world, that just don't realize how deep and how comprehensive the Japanese market has been over the decades. And I'm so grateful that you two are trying to tell the story.
But let's get it out in the open right now. Myron, you want to do a book on Japanese prototypes and show cars? I'm game.
Yeah, I'll take.
We're getting a scoop. A rambling about cars scoop.
Yeah, no scoop yet.
No scoop for you.
No scoop for you.
Here, while you were talking about that, I pulled up this image of the RX 500 concept that Mazda did.
Man.
That, in my opinion, is one of the fascinating ones, because
that's good.
It's just, it imagines
really
like,
good.
what if Mazda had done a mid-engine RX-7 in the late 70s?
Yeah, but even go to like the smaller manufacturers, like the Isuzu MX 1600 or the Hino Contessa 900, the beautiful Michelati design. Even, and that, which still exists. Actually, the photo that we have of that car in the book, the major photo, a friend of mine was in Japan. He went to the Hino Museum where no one spoke a word of English, and snapped the photo for us. So, even the small guys were involved with some really, really cool prototypes, really great looking prototypes.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like the book is writing itself, Myron.
It started. It's begun.
That's what he said to me 6 years ago.
So real quick, I do have to say, I was surprised that 3 models were missing, because there are 3 models that in my head always fit together. And I'm curious, maybe tell me why they didn't make the cut. They are the Honda Beat, the Daihatsu Copen, and the Suzuki Cappuccino. To me, though, they all were kind of around at the same time. 2 of them were K cars, and I think the Copen is not technically a K car.
Well, the Copen you could get either as a K car, or it was sold at the 1300cc engine in export markets.
Because I saw one in Germany once. Yeah.
Yeah. So ask me why I know about the Copen, but.
So why no Copen, Beat, or Cappuccino? From my end, for me, the K cars that we included in there were pretty much performance-oriented K cars, or really special K cars, like the AutoZam AZ1 and Suzuki Alto Works, which is just screaming little cars, and the Suzuki Kara, which is the AutoZam AZ1, effectively. Right.
The Beat is just kind of a pedestrian. It's a K car. It's like the everyday vanilla K car. So I don't see, those cars, regardless of classification, we tried to stay away from. Mark, I don't know.
Yeah. So, ultimately, there is no book that we could have published that somebody couldn't have asked, why is there not this or that? For instance, the 260, the Nissan 260Z is mentioned in the book, but there's no section devoted to it. That doesn't mean that we hate 260Zs. It just means that for Myron and I, whatever that, threshold it had to cross to be, covetable, desirable, collectible. You know, it just didn't cross that threshold. It doesn't mean that if we were at a car show and someone was all excited about a car that's not in the book, that we would, you know, think they're unwashed or walk away. Myron and I really have a wide range of interests. I mean, you've heard about Japanese cars, you've heard about French cars, Italian cars.
I know Myron has a love of Korean cars or South Korean cars these days. He has some very interesting vehicles in that collection.
That may be the next book.
Ooh, I like that.
So
Another scoop.
Right. But, you have to draw the line somewhere. And, Honda Beat, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a nice car. We just didn't feel like we should include it in the book.
No, and I'm sort of just kind of ribbing you because the book is fantastic. It's just that
Right.
Those were the three, like, those are interesting cars. I was just curious why but yeah, I appreciate it though. I appreciate the book in general.
Well, here's a real shocker for you. The last big car to make it into the book was the MR2, and Myron and I had lots of conversations about that, and we decided, it needs to be in the book. So, you just have to make sort of decisions when you're writing it's not the complete history. Mm-hmm. It's the coolest cars according to Myron and Mark, whatever that's worth.
And frankly, there's a Copen that gets serviced at a dealership near my house that if it ever becomes available, I'm the first one on it. So,
interesting.
Yeah, it's a cool car.
Well, in that vein, you had the luxury of just maintaining, the book yourself. You self-publish, so you don't have an editor coming in and saying, "Oh, we're going to cut this, this." Is there a vehicle, or is there like a group of vehicles? Is there something that's, now that the book is out, you're thinking, well, maybe we should have got that in there, or is it just everything's spot on?
I wouldn't say everything is spot on because you always have a little bit of regret here and there, but I can't say if there's anything out there that I've said that I think to myself, gosh, we really missed the boat on that one. I don't know, Mark, what do you think?
No, I agree. That doesn't mean we'll always feel that way because, we're constantly discovering things. And that's one of the really joys of the book and working on the book is, there's so many parts of the hobby that have just been covered and covered and covered, let's write another book on Corvettes, right? Because there's nothing published on Corvettes. The complete history of Ferrari has been published in, one or several books. Even in Japan, there's not really a book like this. And so it was an opportunity to learn and also, to document, a pretty big part of post-war Japanese sports cars and, stylish cars. Did I answer your question?
Oh yeah, no, just fine.
And also to help kickstart the movement too. When we rolled it out, we had our first sample copies at Pebble Beach this year, and there was a Japanese automotive invitational where we had a presentation, and a couple people came to me and said, "Boy, aren't you worried? Now it's a beautiful book. You guys have spent all this time and money. Aren't you worried that people are going to start copying you?" And my response was, "Yeah, that's our hope. We want people to start copying us. We want more great books. We didn't cover everything. We want other people's point of view. There's stuff that we can continue to learn and discover. So hopefully, even though we're the first out there, we hope that we're not the only ones."
Agree.
For sure. And where can people go to buy the book again?
QuietGreatness.com.
QuietGreatness.com. Has there, since it's been out, has there been any discussion, since you were saying there's really even nothing like this in Japan, a Japanese translation for it?
we've sold books all over the world. Actually, just yesterday we sold to Abu Dhabi. We've sold
wow.
to just about every country in Europe, multiple volumes. We've never really seriously discussed the Japanese translation.
Okay. So I want to follow up on something real quick. I'm going to stop this. But Mark, you said at the beginning that you started out collecting car books, and I feel like this is a fantastic car book to collect. But what it immediately made me think of, because I had it on the shelf here. So you guys have this fantastic photo of a Subaru XT Turbo, and I just so happen to have built a model that is borderline identical. And also another one, and this one I actually did prepare beforehand. You guys
now we're at DEF CON 5 nerd level. I just want to let everybody know.
You guys have
when Bruce pulls out the models.
Fantastic photos of this lime green Mazda RX-7, and I have not built this model, but I do own it. I do intend to build it. Just like that.
Yeah, no, we're DEF CON 6 now. This is
there you go.
But what I'm trying to say is, for people out there, they don't have the finances to own one of these cars. They don't have the room to own, a massive collection of cars. Whatever it is, that there's still a way, and these books and the models and things like that, there's still ways to own a tiny piece of them, to experience, to be able to look at them every day. Like, I've got the Subaru on my shelf next to me, and I sit there and I look over at work like, yeah, it's still a cool looking car. Like, it's not, I don't stare at it for hours, but it's like, still love that wedgy little Subaru. So
I'm looking for my Hino Samurai model. I can't find it.
Well, what you don't see on the other side of these black temporary walls, because Myron, since you've been on the show last, I've moved to Michigan.
Oh, I didn't realize.
There are probably 150, 200 bottles waiting over there to be built, and another 30 to be repaired. So yeah,
that's awesome.
DEF CON 6.
Yeah, but yeah, thank you guys for spending some time with us. Like I said, the book is fantastic. I recommend anyone out there, if you have an interest in Japanese cars, of checking it out and picking it up. And thanks for spending time with us. You guys are super fun. Myron, you're always welcome back. And Mark, I want to know how your Toyota Sports 800 does at Bonneville, because that's really cool, man. So yeah,
very cool. Thank you both. Yep.
If I can add,
yeah,
you don't have to be a big fan of Japanese cars, I think, to enjoy the book. If you're just kind of interested in that section of the hobby, it provides a really, really good entry into it. If you're just an overall car enthusiast, it's a real good entry to that end of the hobby, and you get a real appreciation for the cool stuff that's out there. I'll guarantee you, most American enthusiasts will see a little bit of light, will be enlightened by what they see, as opposed to what the standard perception has been of Japanese cars. And it's not a cheap book, but we priced it aggressively so that we can get it into as many people's hands as we possibly could. And that was our main mission in here.
And I mean, it's a volume, it's a wealth of knowledge. That's a very good, I'm glad you mentioned that, Myron, because there's so much in here to absorb and to learn. Okay, you're a fan of the Z, or you're a fan of the Skyline. You can get the book for that, and then you're going to become a fan of so much more. You'll have to build the extra garage, because you're going to end up buying 18 cars.
Yeah, well, and again, there are cars in the book that are like super accessible.
Yeah,
from a pricing standpoint, and that's the beauty of the whole Japanese segment of the hobby.
Mm-hmm.
And then before we go, do you guys have anything else that you want to promote other than the book? We always give our guests an opportunity to do that. So if you have, social media, or you have other projects or anything like that, please feel free to go ahead and tell our listeners about that.
Mark?
If anyone has any fractures that aren't healing, that's my specialty.
I was going to say, see, Mark's not a good marketing guy. I was going to tell him if anybody feels like they're a little too short, Mark can make you taller.
I can make you taller.
Yep, I could have used your shirt. Well,
Smith,
I wouldn't mind being. I wouldn't mind being a little taller right now.
Never
You need to
too
talk to
late.
this man.
It's
never too
pretty
late.
sad that I'm about the same height as Seth's 5-year-old kid. No, I'm not. Not quite that.
That kid's 3, but yeah.
I could have used your services a few years ago when I fractured my ankle, but it's healed now. There's still a plate in there though. I'm still bionic.
Got it. Well, thank you very much for having us.
Oh,
thank
no,
you.
Thank you for taking the time to come on our little podcast here.
And real quick, let's let
quietgreatness.com is where you go to get the book. Myron, what do you have going on?
Really not much more. I'm on Instagram as Junkman356, Myron Vernis on Twitter. But the book has we have a Facebook page and Instagram page and Twitter. A Quiet Greatness on all 3 of those platforms.
Yep, and we'll have links here on YouTube, on Motor One Podcast on YouTube for the video description. We'll have links in our article that goes up every Friday on motor1.com. You're ramblers. You listen. You know the spiel by now. Tell your friends to like, subscribe. We're growing. We did go past our 400 mark, so that means at some point in the near future, I'm going to be drinking a shot of hot sauce. And we'll have to up the ante even more later on. Once we get to 1,000, we're going to have to do something really crazy because we have no shame. We just have no shame. But thank you, Myron. Thank you, Mark, for joining us on this special show. It's always a pleasure to talk really obscure, interesting vehicles. And I'm going to be ordering the volumes here really soon. I can't wait to get my hands on it. It's a great collection for any car enthusiast, Japanese or otherwise.
Yep. Thank you guys so much. And with that, bye-bye, everybody.
We'll see you. Bye-bye.